A smart guy mocks a poor and not-so-bright schoolgirl because she can't confess her love without making a few spelling mistakes. Due to a natural disaster, the girl ends up moving into the schoolboy's house, and they begin living together. At the center of the series is a young and attractive girl named Honey. While resting in the garden, she notices a snow-white horse and follows it. At some point, the horse turns into a handsome guy. Honey approaches him in hopes of a brush, but suddenly she wakes up and realizes she fell asleep on a bench near the school. Hearing the bell for class, she hurries to school and spends time with her friends after the lesson. One of her friends notices that Honey is suspiciously sad and asks why. Honey tells her about herself, revealing that the guy who turned from a snow-white horse is son Joe, the most handsome and popular guy in school who excels in his studies and is always surrounded by girls in love with him. During her drawing lesson, Honey's friend suggests she shouldn't be afraid to confess her feelings to the guy. This conversation is overheard by the school's main beauty, who decides to mock the modest and somewhat naive classmate, claiming that Honey is a loser and has no chance of pleasing son Joe. Honey gets sad, but then the guy she has a crush on shows up in class, making her smile again. Son Joe has arrived to pose during the drawing class and help the students paint his portrait. Honey seizes the opportunity to touch the guy and meticulously draws him, paying attention to every detail. The guy stands in one place for too long, so his legs start to hurt, and his friends help him recover. Meanwhile, a beautiful girl who also loves son Joe thinks Honey's picture is ugly and tries to spoil her mood. After school, Honey hurries to the restaurant where her father works to help him. This job supports her and covers her school expenses. At some point, she decides to consult her father, but she is afraid of being too sincere. She tells him that her friend has fallen in love with a schoolboy, but doesn't know how to tell him. After some thought, her father suggests writing a letter, as this is a very romantic way to confess love. After thanking her father, Honey hurries home and writes a letter telling son Joe how she feels. The next morning, the boy finds the letter in his locker and reads it. Honey sincerely waits for a reply, but son Joe walks past her, ignoring her as if he didn't notice her. Later, Honey is handed the letter, but the pretty girl takes it away to read it in front of the whole school. It turns out that son Joe didn't write a response but criticized the girl, correcting her spelling mistakes and giving her a failing grade, considering her stupid. Learning about this, all the school children laugh at Honey. Honey's best friend finds out about the conflict and wants to fight son Joe for his rudeness. But the vice principal stops the verbal altercation and warns son Joe to stay away from the best student, or he'll be in big trouble. The vice principal asks for the reasons behind the conflict, and son Joe explains what happened. He then turns to Honey, calling her a loser who is impossible to think about, much less love. Taking this to heart, Honey cries bitterly while the others continue to mock her. Upon returning home, Honey helps her father sort out their things, as they recently moved into the house. Among the things, her father finds a painting once done by Honey's mother, and they reminisce about it. Soon, Honey is visited by school friends who want to support her in this difficult moment. Her father is pleased with the guests because they seem kind and responsive. He invites Honey's classmates to dinner, but suddenly, an earthquake begins. They run outside as the house starts to collapse. Not wanting to say goodbye to the only memory of his late wife, Honey's father rushes into the house, which then collapses. Honey is shocked, believing she's been left an orphan, but soon her father emerges with the painting in his hands. He calms her down, promising not to leave this world until he sees her happy and successful. The next morning, John decides to help his friend by collecting donations to rebuild her destroyed house. Son Joe also decides to donate, but Honey sees this and asks him not to, saying she doesn't need anything from him. She rudely tells him that he's too arrogant because of his intelligence and thinks everyone should love him, but that's not true. At one point, she proposes a bet. If Honey passes the exam and gets a high grade, son Joe will publicly apologize. In the evening, Honey and her father go to his best friend's house, as they have nowhere else to live. The friends warmly welcome them and offer them a place to stay. The woman notices Honey's heavy bags and calls her son to help. Soon, it is revealed that son Joe is the son of his father's friends, and they will now live in the same house. Honey is shocked by this news, but the parents are happy that their children attend the same school. A little later, Sunjo's mother takes Honey to a spare pink-colored room. Honey doesn't understand why the room has such a strange renovation, and the woman explains that they prepared it for their future daughter. So far, the family has only one son, so the room is empty and Honey can live there. The woman says she would like to call Honey her daughter, touching Honey deeply, who thanks Sunjo's mother for her support. Sunjo visits Honey and asks her not to tell anyone that they are now living in the same house. Honey blackmails him, claiming she will tell everyone since he treats her badly. In the morning, during breakfast, Sunjo's mother offers to drive him and Honey to school, but Sunjo is against it and leaves on his own, claiming he has other things to do. Honey also doesn't want to be driven by his mother, so she runs after him. Soon, they meet on the street, and Sunjo asks her to stay away from him during class so no one will suspect they're living together. After class, John, like a true friend, decides to walk Honey home. She's afraid to say where she lives, so she deceives him and runs out of the subway car at the first stop. In the evening, Sunjo's mother worries because Honey is late and it's dark outside. Sunjo, not wanting to discuss it, goes to the porch to wait for Honey and make sure she's okay. On her way home, Honey meets a strange man who tries to undress in front of her. Frightened, Honey screams for help, and Sunjo appears to defend her, beating up the man and helping her home. She thanks him for saving her and promises herself to do everything she can to make him fall in love with her. Determined to improve herself, Honey begins to study diligently. In the evening, Sunjo's mother visits Honey, bringing dinner and talking to her. She shows Honey a collection of childhood photos of Sunjo and admits that although he is smart and arrogant, it is because he is afraid to show feelings and get attached to people. The next morning, Honey decides to mock Sunjo by showing him a funny childhood photo, promising to show it to the students. Sunjo, not wanting anyone to know about it, attacks her, but Honey agrees not to show the photo if he helps her study better, and he agrees. Sunjo soon starts helping her with her homework, and her teachers notice the improvement in her grades, praising her hard work. Her friends also notice her tiredness and ask if she's okay, but she doesn't want to talk about it. A few days later, Sunjo suggests Honey take a test to better prepare for the exam. They continue to study hard, and one evening they fall asleep on their books. Sunjo's mother brings them dinner, believing they might make a good couple. She decides not to disturb them and goes to the kitchen. A few days later, the exam results are announced, and Sunjo is shocked to see Honey among the top students. She thanks him for his help and, keeping her promise, returns the funny photo of him. In class, everyone is annoyed at her appearance. Later, she plays soccer with other students, but Sunjo calls her and asks her not to stay late to prepare for tomorrow's lessons. In the evening, Honey tells her parents that she and Sunjo will be playing on different teams, so they can come to support one of them. The next morning, the competition begins, but Honey can't concentrate because she constantly admires Sunjo, causing her team to lose. Sunjo's mother takes some pictures and notices Honey's behavior, realizing she is in love with him. The losing team accuses Honey of playing badly, but their conversation is interrupted by Sunjo's mother, who treats the children to pizza. In the evening, she decides to please Honey by giving her a picture of her and Sunjo, noticing that Honey has fallen asleep. The woman leaves the picture on an open book. The next morning, Han, unsuspecting, opens the book, and the photograph falls out. Noticing the picture, the girl's friends and other students are shocked, believing that Han and SJ are secretly dating. Someone at school takes a picture of it on their phone and sends it to other students, causing everyone to find out about their relationship. Upon seeing the picture, SJ gets angry at the girl and her friends. Tired of being questioned by her friends, Han decides to tell the truth and reveals that she and her father have moved into her friend's house since their place was destroyed. SJ's father turns out to be the friend of Han's father, so he helps her with her studies and lives in the same house with her. Her friends support Han and say that she should fall in love with the guy since they now see each other 24 hours a day. Embarrassed by all this, the girl asks her friends to go home, but instead, they go to the fence and look at SJ's house. The boyfriend's mother notices the guests and invites them into the house, making the situation more awkward. Back at home, SJ sees the girl in the company of her friends and rudely reminds her that this is not her house and she shouldn't bring her friends here. SJ's mother doesn't allow her son to talk to Han like that because this is her home and she decides who she wants to invite. SJ's mother also tells her son that she was the one who put the picture in the book but didn't mean to do anything wrong. The girlfriends feel awkward and rush to leave the house, but the boyfriend's mother stops them and suggests they go to the beach. Everything is paid for, so they should get their things ready and spend the weekend together. A couple of days later, Han, SJ's mother, and the girl's friends go on a trip together. SJ sees this and expresses his displeasure, but his mother isn't ready to listen to his excuses and declares that instead of going to school, the guy will go with them. Shortly before their departure, his friends come to SJ's house and decide to keep him company and go to the beach with them. During the trip, it becomes known that the school beauty overheard Han's friend's conversation and found out about everything in advance, so she came to SJ's house on purpose. SJ's mother tries to get acquainted with her son's classmates and notices that the hottie is overly arrogant. Meanwhile, John feels cheated and betrayed because all his friends are traveling while he must sit in school and listen to the boring stories of teachers. He is genuinely upset that no one warned him about the trip to the sea, so he does not want to study. It turns out that the reason is not only that John was not called, but also his poor financial situation. The guy has no money at all, so he feels embarrassed in front of other people. After counting the change in his pocket, John tearfully asks his teacher to lend him some money, claiming he needs to buy medicine for his sick aunt but forgot his wallet at home. The teacher sympathizes with him and gives him not only money but also his moped so that he could buy the medicine and hurry home to his aunt. On the way to the sea, SJ's mother notices that the pretty girl and Han are in conflict with each other. The woman, using her wisdom, easily resolves the conflict as she feels sympathy for Han and doesn't mind her becoming her son's girlfriend. Meanwhile, John rushes on a moped to the sea because he brazenly cheated the teacher and doesn't have a sick aunt in need of medicine. At some point, the moped breaks down, and John assumes there is no gasoline in it. Unable to think of anything better, he decides to check the contents of the gas tank by lighting it with a lighter, resulting in an explosion. Upon arrival at the beach, the friends enjoy the sea and take a few photos together. At some point, Han's friends notice that SJ's younger brother is drowning and needs help. The girl does not know how to swim but rushes to the boy and tries to save him. Seeing what is happening, SJ goes to help, pulling both Han and his younger brother to shore. At night, the school hottie teases the girl about not being able to swim at her age. Han believes that it is better not to be able to swim, but to try for someone else's good than to be a bad person and hurt others. John, a survivor of the explosion, makes it to the beach and talks about what happened to him. After a few days off, the group returns home and begins studying for new exams. Realizing that her friends can't help her, Han asks SJ to solve difficult questions on some topics. The guy is too smart and fully prepared, so he easily answers all the questions, leaving notes in the girl's book. A couple of days later, a school hottie notices this and decides to test Han's mental abilities by making her answer the questions without peeking in the book. She threatens to tell the principal about everything and accuse the girl of trying to cheat, but Han manages to answer the question without hints. After taking a walk outside, SJ and his younger brother return home to find many students in the living room. It turns out that Han confesses that SJ has been helping her with her studies, and now they all want him to prepare them for the exam. The mother convinces her son to agree, and he becomes a tutor for his class. The next morning, SJ's mother and younger brother leave, leaving Han as the head of the house. The girl decides to cook dinner, but the food burns, causing a real mess in the kitchen. Seeing this, SJ asks the girl not to touch anything and wait for him to cook dinner. After dinner, the girl tries to study but can't find the right book. She goes to SJ's bedroom to ask for help, but he chases her away, thinking it inappropriate for Han to be in his bedroom. Back at her place, the girl is sad as she realizes that she loves SJ, and he still treats her a bit rudely and cruelly. The next morning, the high school students are nervous and waiting for their grades, realizing that this will determine their future and help them get into universities. Han is very nervous and unsure of her grades, so she seeks help from the teacher to change universities. The teacher inflates the students' grades to ensure a better future and is willing to help Han by adding a few points to her overall grade. At some point, the teacher notices a pin in Han's hands for making donations and learns that the school hottie donates to the needy every week. Sometime later, A hurricane approaches the city, and people are advised not to go outside. Han is not frightened by these difficulties because she needs to get to the interview at the university. She manages to get to the meeting with the committee, but they ask her difficult questions she cannot answer. Apologizing, she is about to leave but stops at the last moment and makes a touching speech, after which they decide to enroll her in a prestigious university. In the evening, the families gather to celebrate the event. The parents ask SJ where he has decided to enroll, and the boy declares that he has no intention of attending university. He's not interested in continuing his studies and instead wants to find a job so he can start earning money and become independent soon. These words upset the guy's parents because they want a better future for him so that he can move up the career ladder and achieve more. A little later, Han asks to open the door to talk to him, but he ignores her. Despite this, the girl tries to explain that his parents are proud of him and want the best for their son, so he should change his mind and go to the last exam to get into university, even if not this year, then at least next year. Realizing that the girl is right, SJ opens the door and agrees to her terms. A couple of days later, the day of the long-awaited exam arrives, and the girl is very nervous, dreaming of entering the desired university. She misses John very much, but soon Han meets a friend and learns that he works as a cook in the university canteen and even managed to enter the educational institution. Sometime later, she meets the hottie, and the hottie informs her that she wants to make SJ fall in love with her. Han gets very upset as she can't get the guy's attention and decides to leave his house. Soon, SJ tells his parents that he wants to live alone, and they respect his opinion. Having learned that their son has rented a separate apartment, Han overhears this conversation and is upset, realizing that she will never be able to see SJ again. After a while, SJ leaves his parents' house, and Han goes to university. She is very sad about her breakup with SJ, so she doesn't play with her friends and spends time alone. Her coach decides to cheer her up and tells her that he saw her at a cafe near the university, assuming that SJ works there. Hearing this, Han and her coach go to the cafe and meet the guy working there as a waiter. SJ tries to stay away from the girl, but she notices that the cafe needs an employee and decides to get a job to be closer to the guy. A little later, she decides to meet with the manager to become a waitress and learns that the position has been taken by the high school hottie who is also trying to win SJ over. When she returns home, Han becomes depressed but decides to pursue her goal and signs up for all the courses to become a waitress and learn the intricacies of the profession. She spends all day at university learning to cook and clean the house. Realizing that she still lacks knowledge, the girl asks her friends for help, and they start teaching her the intricacies of different professions. In a few weeks, the girl has already mastered many skills and is ready to become a waitress in the cafe where SJ works. Meanwhile, John learns from his classmates that Han is preparing to become a waitress and decides to make fun of her. He writes insulting words on the wall of the university, causing the girl to cry. However, her friends come to her aid and tell her to ignore the haters and pursue her dream. Meanwhile, Han continues to master the skills of the waiter's profession. She learns to be polite and to endure the rudeness of the cafe visitors, among whom there are unpleasant people. At some point, John's teacher learns that the guy has failed the exams, but still plans to help him. One day, SJ receives news from the manager that the cafe is closing and he can no longer work there. He is very upset, but soon learns that a prestigious restaurant is opening nearby and they need experienced waiters. Taking a chance, the guy applies for a job and gets it. A little later, Han learns that SJ works in a prestigious restaurant and decides to visit him to find out the details. However, SJ explains that he has no intention of being a waiter all his life and wants to open his own restaurant, so he needs money to realize his dream.